material we're going to talk about today is objection handling. So we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's check on your action items from last week. You remember last week was lead follow-up, right? So we talked about the main point of lead follow-up is setting an appointment. Because if you have leads and you just sort of follow them around and you never, close those leads and you're really not doing anything, you got to set an appointment. That's going to be the way to get you there. So here were the action items for last week. Number one, call all your leads. So did you call them and then try to set appointments? So let's talk after we stop the video. Let's talk about, the success or the failure that you had. What happened when you did that? And then maybe some of the objections that came up with that. We could discuss that. So that's number one. Number two, we want to get updates. Let's discuss, once this video is over, let's discuss, how are you on your client event? Have you scheduled that? Do you have it all planned out and ready to go? Third was make 15 center of influence or contacts by telephone to your database. Number four would be 15 handwritten notes. Number five would be to go out and do 5 pop-bys. So I hope you got all that taken care of. So the whole idea, what we're trying to do is, generate leads every day. That's why we ask you to do the center of influence contacts as well as the handwritten notes and the pop-bys. Today, we're going to talk about objection handling, like I said. So really, what is an objection? A number of definitions pop into my head. So it could be a question left over in the mind of a potential client. Could be an opportunity for you to demonstrate your power as a salesperson. Could be a misunderstanding. Could be a test. The client could be wondering, how well are you going to handle objections from buyers and from other agents if you represent me? So it could be a lot of different things. And one thing we need to remember is a condition is different than an objection. So normally we can handle objections. Conditions are things that maybe can't be taken care of. Like if somebody doesn't have any money, no matter what kind of an objection handler we are, we're not going to be able to help them through that unless you got a lot of money in your pocket and give it to them. So to always be on the lookout for the difference between conditions and objections, because they're all out there. So, the best thing to do if I were really looking to be a great objection handler, if you look at the other offerings on our Hometown University YouTube channel, I know I have done, there's probably 5 classes recorded of me talking about handling objections. So we're going to go over the finer points here, but you may want to go dive deeper in it with some of those other videos on the YouTube channel. So let's just talk about objections. So when you hear an objection, could be something like we want to think it over. Could be we want to hire somebody that we know. We have a friend in the business. We don't want to pay your commission. Whatever it might be, they're just going to come up. So what do you normally do? What's human nature when you hear an objection? The first thing is you usually get frazzled. You get, your heart rate elevates. You get defensive. And the best strategy to handle an objection is not to do any of those things. It's quite the contrary to that, where you want to smile and you want to be excited that they brought it up. That totally contradicts human nature. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to be on their team. We want to be like, hey, we understand. We're empathetic. That's a great word to write down, empathy. We understand their situation. We're on their side. We want to help them work through all these concerns. So, phrases of affirmation are things you might want to use. Hey, I understand. Hey, I get it. You're completely right about that. So all those kind of phrases will help you sort of cross the bridge and get into their corner. Another thing you might want to do is clarify. When you hear an objection, we want you to cut your commission. Well, is it because they just don't like commission? Is it because another agent said they would? Is it because they don't have enough money to pay the full commission? I don't know. That's what we need to ask and clarify. You might get on the path of handling an objection, and the path you take might not be the one that is really relevant to them if you don't clarify. So that's important as well. So agree, smile, be excited they brought it up, clarify, and then when you start thinking about getting ready to handle the objection, don't use the word but. So don't say, hey, I understand and you're right and all this, but, because but negates everything you've said before. So if I say, I use this example all the time. Hey, Bob's a great guy and he's, really friendly and goes out of his way to help everybody, but then the truth is coming after that. It negates everything you've said beforehand. Use the word and connects and adds to and helps us, be more on the positive side of things when we're trying to handle objections. So you agree, you affirm, you clarify, and then you use the word and then you start to handle the objection. How do we handle the objection? Well, we're going to talk about some different techniques, but overall, you want to ask questions rather than make statements. So if you ask questions, you control where the dialogue is going to go. We use the term verbal vomit a lot of times when amateurs are trying to handle objections. They just talk because they're so nervous, and it really just makes it boring for the client. It rarely works. Asking logical questions that leads them to the desired outcome. You're trying to list the home. You're trying to help them figure out if this home is one that they would like to buy. And you want to make a logical argument. So basically, what I mean by that is you're trying to ask questions and build agreement and stack that on top of each other. So, Mr. and Miss Home Buyer, you told me that initially that a 3-bedroom house is going to work for you, right? How many bedrooms is this house? Well, this has 3. And you said you wanted a brick rancher, right? Yes, we did. And on and on and on. And then so the close would be, well, this is a 3-bedroom house. It's in Mechanicsville. It's in the right school district. It has a fenced rear yard. What else would you be looking for? Well, that's just really what it is. So then why don't we do the right thing and make an offer? So we're trying to build a logical argument is not the right word because we don't want to argue. We're just asking questions that lead the client to the desired result. Remember, selling is not telling. Selling is asking a series of questions that leads to the desired result. So you do that. And then once you've got an agreement, then you want to remember to close. One of the things that amateur objection handlers like to do is they like to say, do you have any other questions? Well, all that's doing is inviting more objections, which you really don't want. If they have other questions, then they'll ask them. You don't need to encourage that, okay? So a couple little techniques that you might want to think about. One is called the level shift, and that is trying to go from where you're weak to maybe turning things around to where you might be strong. And I'll give you an example of that. A great one is if you're a new agent and somebody says, well, gosh, we're worried about you're new. So what I would say is, hey, I understand. Obviously, this is a big decision, right? Yeah, it is. And you just want to make sure you have the right person for the job, don't you? Oh, yeah, of course. So tell me, are you looking for an active or a passive agent? Well, we want an active agent. Well, what does an active agent do? Well, I guess an active agent would get out and market my home and get on the phone and call their agents and do open houses and do a video and stage and do all sorts of things. Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, so basically what you're telling me is you want somebody who is going to really get after it and do the job, be in touch with you, be enthusiastic, and really do everything you want to get your home sold in an aggressive manner. Is that right? Yes. So can I tell you there are really two kind of agents out there? There's active and passive, right? And you don't want a passive agent. You just told me that, right? No, we don't want a passive agent. So many people think that it comes down to experienced agents versus inexperienced agents, but it's really about active versus passive, isn't it? Well, yeah. So one of the things you'd never want to do would be to hire somebody who didn't really have your home as their number one priority. Somebody who, maybe it was just a numbers game to them. You wouldn't want that, would you? No, of course not. Well, can I tell you, a lot of these agents that have been around the block, I mean, if they've got 15, 20 listings going on, how important is your house to them? Well, I don't know. Well, if they've got all these listings going on, do they have a lot of time to spend for you? Probably not. Is your house going to be their number one priority? I don't know. So I guess, in some ways, you really don't want to have someone who has just got so much going on that you're just a number to them, do you? No. You want that active agent. You want me to represent you, knowing that I'm going to put all my energy, all my skill, all my, my heart and soul into getting your home sold for the best price in the quickest time possible with the less stress on you. Won't that be great? So that's sort of the level shift, taking what's weak, like being an inexperienced agent, and then turning that into maybe the experienced agent isn't all that great, and the inexperienced agent is great. So that's a level shift. Another one is called Has There Ever Been a Time? And this one's really good. You want to put somebody in a place where if they're getting ready to make a decision that is not the desired outcome, put them in a position where remind them of a time when they were in that same situation where they thought they were going to be doing something great and it turned out to really be bad. Like, if somebody's thinking about selling the house themselves, a good example would be, hey, I understand that. And a lot of times you want to save money, you want to try to do it yourself, and maybe you feel like you just don't need to hire a professional, do you? Of course not. Well, I certainly get that. And has there ever been a time when you maybe had the same feelings in a different area and you went ahead and tried to do something yourself and it didn't work out all that well? Most people have many instances in their life where they've botched it up and they went to the Home Depot and they didn't get the grill assembled. They tried to save $20 and then they wound up cutting themselves and losing pieces and the grill didn't work when they assembled it themselves. Well, you want to just draw all that out and draw out all those negative feelings. Like, gosh, so how did that make you feel? I really felt stupid. My wife still tells me how dumb I was to do that. And so did you really save any money? No, I had to pay somebody to come over and do it. We didn't have the parts, so we had to go buy the parts. It could be about when they tried to paint something themselves or do an automobile repair or, whatever, put a bike together on Christmas Eve. Most people have horrible stories about that. We want to remind them of that, draw out all that, and then just bring it together by saying, hey, can you see that this time is just like that? So let's do the right thing. Let's hire a professional, an active agent like myself, to get your home sold. Won't that be great? And then smile, nod, and hopefully move on. So here's the thing that what we need to do is we need to think about objections that are out there in the world, okay? How many are there? I don't know. I would think if you sit down and as a class, we think about 10 or 15 objections, we're going to cover most of the bases. Most of the objections, even the ones that we don't put on this list, are going to be first cousins to the ones that are on the list. And it's pretty simple. If you could feel comfortable by handling any of those objections, if you had objection handlers for those, I would bet you that would make you over $1 million in a 20, 25-year period. Because you're just going to be confident, you're going to appear to be competent,
yeah, there's two.
and you're just going to be able to roll through it. One of the reasons we don't set appointments and we don't do our lead generation is because we're afraid of the objections that might come up. If you
like
know
it works
that
on my
you're just going to
browser,
get punched in the nose,
I don't like
well,
the browser.
you're going to avoid those situations.
By the way,
So
sorry,
maybe
I'm
you're
screen
not
recording.
prospecting. Maybe you're not trying to set appointments because
yeah,
you're worried about
the
objections.
HTR carry time, that's the one I'm always.
So one of the things we'll ask you is to think about, what objections are the most popular for you, and we'll get to that when we talk about our action items for this week. So, I'll give you a couple examples, and we talked about them before. So we want to think it over. That's the oldest one in the book. We want to interview multiple agents. We've never heard of you. We've never heard of your company. You're too new. You're too old. We want you to cut your commission. Let's see, we already said we want to think it over. That's a pretty good list to get you started. And so even here in your workbook, we've given you, I think there's 10 that you can look at that will, again, help you get started with that. So a couple things just to remember. So you want to, when you hear an objection, no matter what, you want to smile and be excited that they brought it up. Empathetic, use empathy. If they're really concerned, you need to be really concerned. Mirror and match their emotion, their rate of speech, their tonality, and just understand, get in their corner and understand. Don't make them wrong, just understand and help guide them to the promised land. Okay? That's that's maybe the best thing you can do as far as handling objections. And then you can go right down that list of clarifying, using the word and, asking questions. That's going to be a tough one because naturally we just don't do that. Okay? We're much better at making statements. So anyway, that's sort of the overall nuts and bolts of handling objection. You want to go in more detail, then I'd get on the YouTube channel and watch one of the other classes or watch them all. So here's what we have for our action items for next week. I want you to go and think about the top 3 objection handlers that you fear the most, or maybe they're the 3 that come up the most in your world. So write those down. Write those down. The second thing, I want you to think about 3 objection handlers for each of those. So if your biggest fear is, I'm new to the business, then you'd want to write down 3 different responses that you could sort of come back and go through with the clients. Okay? So if you then the next one you write down 3, and the next one you write down 3. So you'll have 9 different responses, and you'll have 3 objections. And you can share these with other people in the class. And the best thing to do is to role play these things. If you never practice them, you're never going to get any better with them. So in order to become the Jedi Knight of handling objections, you just got to practice. Okay. So then you're going to do 15 center of influence or database phone calls. And you might say to yourself, gosh, this is week 7. I've been doing this. It's so boring. Well, that's our job. I mean, we got to call people. We got to be talking to people and generating business. That is our job. Then we're going to do 15 notes, and then we're going to do 5 pop-bys. So hopefully that helps you. It's week 7. Looking forward to wrapping this thing up pretty soon. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My number is 804-244-1022. Be happy to role play any objections that you have with you or go over any of this material.